Om Bhadram Karnebhihi Shruniyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyema Akshavirya Jatraha Stirairangaish Tushtuvamsas Tanubir Vyashema Devahitam Yadayahu Swasti na Indro Vridashrabaha Swasti na Pusha Vishvadevaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatiir Dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we hear with our ears what is good and spiritual. May we see with our eyes what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while praising the Lord and Mother of the universe, with healthy mind and body, live a life that is beneficial to ourselves and to all others. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. One moment here while I make a couple of adjustments. Here we go. Okay, well, last week, or rather last time that we met, we were working on verse 6 of the Encomium, 58 verses of Encomium in praise of self-effort. And we're going to, let me go ahead and show that screen. I remember that when we took it up last week, I had this idea that maybe I would do we could work our way through the entire verse, this number 6, in one hour. But that was very optimistic. But I think we got a good grounding in these threefold miseries, which, if you recall, were adhyatmika, adibhautika, and adidaivika. And the first one is those miseries arising internally from the body and from the mind. The next one, adibhautika, is those miseries arising from other beings, especially human beings, but also animals and viruses, probably. They start out outside, then they get inside the body. And then the last one, which is a little esoteric for those of us in the West, is the adidaivika, which is those sufferings arising from on high by cosmic forces. And those cosmic forces include not only our ancestors, that we maintain this relationship of parent and child and other kinds of relatives and trading places over lifetimes, but also that relationship we have with the elements, the powers of the elements, the powers of the senses. All of these create karma. And so it's very hard to talk about the threefold miseries without bringing in karma, but that becomes a whole topic for one or two more classes, and we will probably do that at some point. But just know that those are the three, and they comprise what the seers and the striving ones have referred to as the universal ocean of suffering. And when we look at that universal ocean of suffering, it's like, how do we cross over that? And that's what's being said. We're being given one of the very important answers to that. And that's by taking recourse to the ultra-cosmic trinity, which is going to be our topic today. And also how we approach the ultra-cosmic trinity through the three alluring offerings, which are arati, daily invocation, and puja, ritual ceremonies of devotion and worship, and also chanting of the names and singing God's glories. All of these help us approach that ultra-cosmic Trinity. Now, before we move off of the threefold miseries without forgetting them, there was one thing that we didn't get to last time. And it was very interesting that Babaji actually brought it up in last Sunday's class on the class number 14 of the non-dual teachings of the Avadut, for anyone who hasn't watched that. And he spent time with these 8 great accomplishments. And those 3 sufferings are listed right here as the primary accomplishments, overcoming them. So when we hear Holy Mother say that we need peace of mind first and foremost, that is an intro into overcoming these. And something else that Babaji said during his class was that his favorite part was the 5 secondary cities, powers or accomplishments. Why? Because they lead to the 3 primary ones. And in fact, without gaining all of these or most of these, we're not going to get the first 3. We're not going to get this overcoming of the threefold miseries and being able to transcend. And this is what we're talking about. We need to transcend these sufferings, because as long as we're identified as a human being, identified in all the different ways, with our gender, with our relationships, with our work, with our actions, with our desires, with our emotions, as long as we are identified with all these things, then we can't transcend. And all of these things, pursuing a spiritual path, gaining knowledge of scripture, and concentration and study, gaining guru and or disciples, depending upon whether we're traversing the path, and friends, disciples or friends, as those who are traversing the path. These friends, these are members of our Sangha. These are people walking maybe a different path than we're walking, but also a yogic path. Yoga and yogic here, referring to something that purifies the mind, and then achieving self-purification in all these different ways, purity of location, of action, and of mind. So these secondary cities are what are going to set us on the path first of, say, devotion, self-surrender, getting a glimpse of higher truth, coming into contact with the non-dual scriptures, realizing in a very, very deep and palpable way that we're not the body, the mind, the emotions, we're not the ego, the individual ego, that we have an identity that is all embracing, all encompassing, all pervading. And this is what these 5 secondary cities bring to us. And then we can step off of these. In the process of gaining this purification of mind means that we're cleaning up our samskaras, we're neutralizing karma, we're becoming able to meditate, and not just meditate, but have that meditation transform, mature into samadhi. And that's where the samskaras begin to get attenuated and transformed into samskaras for samadhi, as we've been told in the yoga system. Then as these things happen, then we gain that ability to just become the witness of everything that's happening in the universe. So again, as long as we identify with body, with the subtle body, even with the causal body, we're going to be subject to Maya. We're going to be subject to nature. And if we're still in a place where, wow, I really, the world is great. Yeah, there's some problems, but the pleasures and the joys here are so important. to me. If we're still kind of traveling in that sort of realm, which is not unusual, and it's, we're not putting anyone down. We're just saying that for every pleasure, there's a suffering that comes up. And at this point, I'd like to do a reading out of Swami Nikhilananda's Introduction to Self-Knowledge. I think we're all pretty familiar with this book, some of us, and others who may see this in another time. This is an important introduction to Vedanta. But there's a section where Swami Nikhilananda is talking about Maya and talking about how we keep getting thwarted. He says, Maya is responsible for the contradictions in our thinking and actions, right? So here we are, spiritual aspirants, walking the path of Vedanta, and we we've heard the truth and we've contemplated it, but that struggle to assimilate it and make it move through every fiber of our body so that our thought, our words, and our actions are all, united. This is hard. And Maya's the problem with this. So what is this Maya? He says, Maya is responsible for the contradictions in our thinking and actions. Good, he goes on. So just settle yourself in for a minute here. Good is inevitably followed by evil, and yet we work to create only good, believing that it will ultimately eliminate evil in this relative world. We believe in the progressive evolution of the universe. This is Maya. The cause determines the effect. We all know this. Yet we seek to accomplish good ends by bad means. We seek to establish peace through war. We see a lot of that right now. This is Maya. A man robs his fellow man and then gives away his wealth in philanthropy, expecting eternal happiness thereafter or eternal fame. And we see a lot of that. Attachment, without which no happiness is possible on earth, creates bondage and brings suffering to both the lover and beloved. This is all Maya. Money creates leisure and builds up culture, and in the end, emasculates a nation and brings about its ruin. The performance of duty elevates a person above the animals, but also obstructs their ultimate freedom. We want to conquer nature through material resources, and in the end, we only become slaves of matter. This is Maya. As long as we identify ourselves with the relative world, this Maya, or contradiction, broods over our every action and thought. There is no freedom in Maya, in nature. Freedom lies beyond. And then he quotes from the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna says, those who take shelter in me ultimately go beyond Maya. He also quotes Lord Jesus as, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So, before we're able to assimilate the non-dual truth, then we reach out to that being, that reality in the cosmos that transcends nature, that for whom nature is just a power, and who is all pervasive. So we're talking about the ultra-cosmic trinity right now, which consists of Ishvara or Ishvari, the feminine aspect, which is the personal God, also known as, referred to as Saguna Brahman, and which we know as all pervasive at all levels. This is the personal God, the God of the universe, who wields creation, preservation, and destruction. It is above what we think of as the cosmic trinity in Vedic tradition, and it is the wielder of the Shakti power. The second aspect is avatar. So in the Vedic tradition, we have this theory or this belief in the incarnation, probably just Christianity and Hinduism or Vedic culture has this strong belief in the divine incarnation. And of course, we all know that in India, we see that this is something that happens again and again over ages. And then there's the Ishtam. So that's the cosmic trinity, the ultra cosmic trinity. This Ishtam means the chosen ideal. So we're going to take up each one of these in detail. And let me bring up another chart that we can look at. Yes. Okay. Well, maybe I'll show it a little bit later. So let's talk a little bit more. Oh, I know. One moment, please. That's the chart. Okay. So let's take a look at some of these features of Ishvara. Now, of course, we have to say that those who believe that the best thing for them is following the formless, following, the Advaitic truth, think that they want to jump away from Ishvara, from the personal God. But there really is no jumping away from the personal God. As long as we think that we're an individual, there is a cosmic counterpart. The two are coexistent, as Swamiji tells us. And it's when the individual transcends all limitations that the two together merge into the absolute Brahman. So from the Advaitic philosophical standpoint, Ishvara or Ishvari is Brahman seen through Maya. It's the highest conception possible for the dual mind. And as Nikhilananda put so well, that the importance of Ishvara, even though it's not the ultimate station from the standpoint of the Advaita philosophy, its importance is without compare. It's without measure. It's so important. So again, let's take a look at this Ishvara, the personal God, God with name and form, or just name. And so, there are some who think of God as personal, but without form. As we just said, it's the highest reading of Brahman possible for the dual mind. It is the master of Maya, even though it's through the veil of Maya that Brahman appears to us as Ishvara. At the same time, it is the wielder of Maya. It is the repository of all blessed qualities. So this is where we think nirguna and saguna. Nirguna means without attributes, and that's the designation for Brahman, the absolute, for nirguna Brahman. And so when Brahman appears through Maya as Ishvara, it becomes saguna with attributes. And so therefore, at this highest ultimate level, this is just the slight veil before entering into Nirguna Brahman, we have all the divine qualities. And so what are some of these divine qualities? These are things like looking for my list, things like, pardon me, let me go to the list. There we go. These are the 6 treasures of the Godhead. Opulence or infinity, bala, power, glory, Aishvarya, strength or lordship, tejas, splendor, radiance, vijnana, wisdom or truth, tyaga, renunciation or transcendence. So when here we are seeking truth, we are seeking strength, we want to know our infinite nature, then it's to Ishvara or Ishvari, that we can begin to see and identify with those qualities. And there's also other powers that show up in other uh, renderings. Sri Ramakrishna lists all of those. He also lists things like dispassion, forgiveness, fortitude, creativity, self-awareness, and also human beings. Human beings are a power of Ishvara, which I think is very interesting. Let's go back to this. So, repository of all blessed qualities, and then is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. So every single one of these qualities or attributes that are being listed are platforms or are positions of meditation. Each of them should be taken up and meditated upon as this cosmic power. Now, when we look at being omnipresent, another word for that is all pervasive. So if this Ishvara is all pervasive, then nothing is untouched by its presence. Nothing is separate from its presence. And then that means that all those attributes are part of that presence. And so then worshiping that presence, seeing it in the great divine incarnations, and taking on a chosen ideal. All these are ways to identify all of that within ourselves. He's the sum total, or she, the sum total of all individual souls. So right there we get the explanation for how human beings are a power of Ishvara. Just think of that, the sum total of all individual souls. And this here is the only way we will get to true brotherhood. Politics can't give it to us. Humanism can't get it to us, because there's always going to be conflicts between personalities. But when we see that all individual souls are part and parcel of this Ishvara, then we begin to identify as soul rather than as bodies, as cultures, as preferences, emotions, all these different things, as different philosophical standpoints, different political standpoints. All these things go out the door when we see that Ishvara, that God of the universe, is the sum total of all souls, and therefore is the refuge of all souls. So we talked about the Advaitic view of Ishvara, but what about the qualified view? Here it says that Ishvara is separate from Brahman and has its own existence, though it is ultimately dependent upon Brahman. Thus, Ishvara is fully imbued with attributes, is the universal ruler over all creation, but Brahman is fully transcendent. But you get to the Father through the Son, as we say. And as Babaji will often say sometimes, that you need friends in high places. Again, while we are still bearing with and trying to push through these limitations of being an individual, then we have to seek that which is the cosmic side of it, that transcends all of that. So I think I've made that point. So let's go on to Avatar at this point. So this is the divine incarnation. And for those of us raised in a in a Christian tradition, then we look at Avatar as the one who gives us salvation. The divine incarnation gives us salvation. And so we just want to take refuge there and maybe are so in awe of the grandeur of a divine incarnation, the incarnation of God, that we may forget that first and foremost, this divine incarnation is an exemplar and shows us how to live a truly spiritual life in the most natural way possible. And sure, the divine incarnation will exhibit these powers, but the main thing is the teachings and what we see and how we see their life. And this is why Sri Ramakrishna is so important to us, because he's recent. He only passed away in 1886, and we have a voluminous record of his life that's been vetted by so many different people who lived at the same time as him and who saw how he engaged in his sadhana and saw the changes that he underwent in that process, who also saw him in the great glory of realizing his divinity, his divine incarnation. And in fact, let me just read something that's very amazing and wonderful. It's out of Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play, also known as Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master. And this is Swami Sharananda talking about a couple of the things that Sri Ramakrishna realized in his life about the importance of this incarnation. Remember, he never, everything was mother for him. He wasn't ever taking anything to the self. If he was a divine incarnation, mother made that happen. If he performed all these Maya destroying sadhanas, spiritual practices, it was mother who made him do this. So there was like no ego in him. So here's what Swami says. From both the divine and ordinary planes of existence, the master, Sri Ramakrishna, observed the present degradation of religion in India and the narrow-mindedness of existing religious faiths. He saw that previous teachers were ignorant of the fact that all religious paths are equally true, and that people, according to their different natures, followed different paths, but finally reached the same goal. How did he know this? Because he did this himself. First time we ever have it on record. The master he also saw that the preaching of previous teachers was inappropriate because they did not take into consideration place, time, and person. The master realized these great and novel truths, especially when he traveled to holy places. He also learned that his attitude, which was completely free from bigotry and antagonism, was utterly unique. This was his personal discovery, and he would have to give it to the world. So Mother made him pass through all of that because this is the need of the age right now. And not only was he free from bigotry and antagonism, he was free from the idea of conversion, that people had to convert. He was completely free from the idea that anybody should change their religion, only they should walk it in the most sincere and true way possible. So why does a divine incarnation come? We hear about that in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 4, where Sri Krishna says, whenever there is decline of dharma and rise of adharma, I embody myself to protect the good and to destroy the evildoers, and also to stabilize dharma. I am born in every age. So in every age, not always just a set yuga, but in every cycle of where uh, the eternal religion, the truths of religion have declined, then and a dharma rises when people, wherever they are in the world, in different countries, different cultures, etc., where uh, the highest good has given way and fallen to just mundane convention. And even in that sense, the welfare of other beings is not being upheld. When this happens, then Avatar comes. And Avatar is one, as we know, uh, but it appears from time to time. There's only one cosmic Godhead, but it takes many forms, not only cosmically, as it appears in different religions, different schools of thought, but also as it comes as a divine incarnation. So Swami Shardananda here puts it in a very beautiful way in terms of the longing of the devotees, which also brings forth the divine incarnation. As excessive heat generates clouds, as waxing is followed by waning, and as prosperity arises after adversity, so when innumerable people feel a long accumulated spiritual emptiness, the infinite compassion of the Divine Mother takes form and appears as a living and moving manifestation of the power of the Guru. Out of grace, the Divine Mother made the Master understand this and showed him that she had enacted her Leela through him many times in previous ages and would continue to do so many times in the future. The Master could not enjoy liberation like ordinary human beings. It is clear that from this time on, the Master experienced this, and this is a quote from him: "Wherever there is any trouble in the Divine Mother's empire, I shall have to rush there to stop it, like a government officer." So, yes. So I encourage everybody to read The Great Master, or to read the new translation of it by Swami Chaitanananda, of Swami Shardananda's work, Sri Ramakrishna and his Divine Play, and see his sadhana and what he went through, and then all his realizations. It's how we know what a divine incarnation really is. So one of the features, now, Babaji, of course, this is the encomium, and it's part of the Sword of the Goddess series, which has something like, I don't know, 108 different chapters. No, it probably more than that. And before he launched into Footfalls, he did a few different chapters. And in one of them, he did this ultracosmic trinity. So I'm also drawing a little bit on that for this class. So he makes the point, Babaji that is, that the divine incarnation embodies all the qualities of Ishvara. Therefore, Avatar embodies all the spiritual ideals of living beings, and thus enables them to have a vision of their chosen ideal. This is one of the great functions of Avatar. And this is something we saw repeatedly in Sri Ramakrishna. So let's just highlight this a little bit. The divine incarnation embodies all the qualities of Ishvara. So it's also said that when Jesus walked the earth, there was no Christianity. When Buddha walked the earth, there was no Buddhism. That only came later. And in a sense, probably compared to what the disciples of Buddha, the apostles of Jesus, experienced in his presence, that there's been some limits put on who and what the divine incarnation is. So it gets perhaps slimmed down for a particular culture. But when Avatar walks the earth, then whatever kind of chosen ideal or spiritual ideal a person cherishes, if they're really a devotee and seeking the highest, that they, the highest according to what they understand at the time, then they will see that in the divine incarnation. And in Sri Ramakrishna's life, we saw people whose ideal was Shiva seeing Sri Ramakrishna as Shiva, seeing whose ideal was Mother Kali and seeing Mother Kali in him, whose ideal was Krishna or Gopala, Govinda, all these different divine beings. They saw this in him. And the same thing happened with Holy Mother. People saw their chosen ideal in her. Now, not just with Hindus, but also with a Christian devotee. And before I give that story, because these are great examples, Swami Brahmananda was still alive when one of the great sculptures of Sri Ramakrishna made out of marble was being created. And after many years of the sculptor working on it, they asked Swami Brahmananda Maharaj, who was the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna, he was asked to look at a statue someone had made of Sri Ramakrishna to see whether it was a good likeness. Maharaj asked, "In what form has the sculptor made it?" Now that sounds like, what do you mean? It's supposed to look like Sri Ramakrishna. But the meaning of his question becomes clear if we keep in mind that the master appeared to him in many different aspects of divinity. So now let me tell you about this Christian devotee. This comes out of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room with the devotees, and he was talking to this Christian devotee by the name of Mishra. He was born in a Christian family in northwestern India, and he belonged to the Quaker sect. He was about 35 years old, and he was dressed in European dress. But underneath it, he actually wore the ochre cloth of a sannyasi. And that was because two of his brothers had died in a freak accident during the marriage of one of them. And at that moment, he just gave up. He just decided to renounce the world. And so Mishra, in the company of the Hindu devotees, even though he sees himself as Christian, he says, "It is Rama alone who dwells in all beings." Sri Ramakrishna said to the younger Naren in Mishra's hearing, "Rama is one, but he has 1,000 names. He who is called God by the Christians is addressed by the Hindus as Rama, Krishna, Ishvara, and by other names. Just like a lake has many ghats, and the Hindus drink water at one ghat and call it jal, and the Christians at another and call it water, and so forth. Likewise, he who is God to the Christians is Allah to the Muslims, And then Mishra speaks again, and he says, "Jesus is not the son of Mary. He is God himself." And then turning to the devotees, now he, pointing to Sri Ramakrishna, is as you see him. In other words, Jesus is God himself. He is appearing now as we see him here with Sri Ramakrishna. Again, he is God himself. You are not able to recognize him. I have seen him before in visions, though I see him now directly with my eyes. And Sri Ramakrishna, Mishra continues and he says, "Sir, even when I lived at home, I used to see light." Sri Ramakrishna had said, "Do you see visions?" And he said, "Even when I lived at home, I used to see light. Then I had a vision of Jesus. How can I describe that beauty? How insignificant is the beauty of a romantic partner compared with that beauty?" And then Sri Ramakrishna said to the devotees, "I saw him standing in a heroic posture," meaning Mr. Mishra. As he uttered these words, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi. He stood facing the west. Then, regaining partial consciousness, he fixed his gaze on Mishra and began to laugh. Still in ecstatic mood, he shook hands with him and laughed again. And then taking him by the hands, he said, "You will get what you are seeking." And Mishra said with folded hands, "Since that day, I have surrendered to you my mind, soul, and body." So this Christian devotee who has renounced the world and sees no difference between Jesus. He sees all the qualities of Jesus in Sri Ramakrishna. So it's a very inspiring story. Anyway, Avatar has no attachment with any one religion, but easily takes on the ambience of any given philosophy or religion as the time demands, and sometimes a new religion is fostered. So for the devotees, the avatar is a chance to see God face to face on earth, to see how to live a divine life. So the incarnation is exemplar, not just savior, as we were saying, and to feel that God is one's own. And that's something that all the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna felt. And in the depictions of the apostles of Jesus, we also see that Jesus was their own. For others, the avatar is a savior. Okay, Babaji's making a distinction here. There are the devotees who believe in God and who are walking a spiritual path. And then there are others who may also believe in God, but they're not yet maybe walking a yogic transformative path in their tradition, whatever their tradition is. So for them, avatar is a savior, the only chance for relief from suffering and release from bondage. And for the worldly minded, avatar is an ordinary human being whose significance escapes them due to their preoccupation with sense life. So let me just share my screen again with a different chart and see if we've touched on everything. Share screen. There it is. So Avatar, the one who descends, who embodies Ishvara, he reestablishes the eternal truth on fresh footing. So, yeah, this is why we make that distinction between Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion, and Yuga Dharma, the Dharma of the age, because the Dharma of the age gets set up by the divine incarnation, but over time it declines. And so divine incarnation comes back and dusts off all those aspects of the decline and shows us again the eternal truth. He provides devotees a chance to see God face to face. Here we go. Exemplifies divine life and convinces devotees of their eternal existence. And that also inspires them to walk the spiritual path and to intensify their efforts at self-purification, and comes with an entourage that helps establish the new Yuga Dharma. So the new Dharma of the age. And this is something that we easily see in the life of Buddha, in the life of Shankara, I would say also to some extent in the life of Saint Francis of Assisi. He left a lineage and started monasteries. We see it in the life of Shankaracharya and Chaitanya and also Sri Ramakrishna. They all had an entourage to push through this revivification and representation for the time of the eternal truth. So something else that Babaji writes in that chapter is the avatar is one who knows the Atman without forgetfulness and free of doubt. For as long as mankind has striven and suffered, so long as Avatar descended into the fray of embodiment and activity to help guide human nature, human beings, and enlighten them as to their true nature. There's a word for this. It's one of the divine names of Sri Krishna. It's Achyuta. He's called Achyuta, one who never forgets who never deviates from their divine nature. So let's move on now to the Ishtam. This is the chosen spiritual ideal with form or without form, but with attributes. And we can also think of it as the inner ruler, immortal, seated in the heart, called the Antaryaman. When a person chooses or is given a chosen ideal by the guru, it can be an avatar, it can be a guru, it can be a god, a goddess, it can be a divine attribute like mercy, truth. All these things can be one's chosen ideal. And so here, let's go back and think about this ultra-cosmic trinity, and it's, generally in the Sanatana Dharma of India, is one. It's a three-faced guide, as Babaji put it. In fact, I didn't read that, which I wanted to. In the rich and diverse tradition of Vedic wisdom, inundated with profuse systems of learning, conducive to spiritual growth on all levels, there is a triple-faced guide who oversees all processes and who leads the truth-seeking aspirant on to consummate fulfillment. So the thing about a trinity is that you cannot separate it. It's all linked. So I was once given a beautiful example of this, that if you take three matches and you light them, or three candles and you light them, it appears that you have three separate flames. But if you put them together, you see that they are one flame. So we can think of this ultra-cosmic trinity in this way. So Ishvara is all-pervasive through all 14 realms of existence, all-pervasive and appearing in the hearts of all beings as the Ishtam and as the Antaryami, and also takes embodiment in the avatar. So these are just all three forms of this one reality. And as I was preparing for this class and looking at what different beings were saying, it also became clear that Ishvara, you cannot separate Ishvara from the ultimate guru. This ultimate guru is part of that, is part and parcel of this Ishvara. Ishvara is the ultimate teacher of all living beings. And in reading things that Holy Mother said and things that Sri Ramakrishna said, you just can't not bring in this forth. It's like the principle is underlying every single one of these. What is the guru? The guru is the guide. What does Avatar do? Avatar shows us how to guide other beings and creates and brings forth a lineage of beings who, through paraparam, paraparamtara, oh, I'm getting the word wrong. Anyway, you know what I mean. This transmission of truth from guru to disciple, where some disciples become the guru and then they pass it on again to Guru Parampara, there it is. That this is what the avatar does. And the Ishtam is the internal version of this, not separate from Ishvara. So here's some quotes from Sri Ramakrishna. If a devotee believes 100% that their chosen ideal is God, then he attains God and sees him. So there's something to take into our meditation and see, bring forth all the reasoning and all the teachings forth to make our faith in this adamant. And then Sri Ramakrishna says, that one who is the guru is also the ishta, the chosen ideal. The guru is the thread that leads to God. Women perform a ritualistic worship known as the Ananta Vrata, the object of worship being the infinite, capital I. But actually the deity worshipped is Vishnu, which is a cosmic aspect. In him are the infinite forms of God. If you asked me which form of God you should meditate upon, I should say, fix your attention on that form which appeals to you most, but know for certain that all forms are the forms of one God alone. The farther you advance, the more you will realize that God alone has become everything. He alone does everything. God alone is the Guru, and God alone is the Ishtam. God alone gives us knowledge and devotion. So I have one more. We have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to show you something else. Actually, I wanted to actually send you off with some beautiful music. Let me stop this share. So we'll be launching next time in 2 weeks into the 3 alluring offerings. So how do we get close to this Ishtam, to Ishvara? How do we do this? We do it through devotion. And how do we cultivate this devotion? Well, it's through the 3 alluring offerings. And we can just jump to the chase here, that chanting the names of God, dwelling on the attributes of God, thinking of the glories and the activities of the divine incarnation. These are ways that we cultivate and increase and intensify our love. And as we do that, that increases our relationship, our feeling that God is our own and ultimately is our very self. So just settle back, and we're not going to play the whole thing, but make sure that we capture the English translation. This is from an album called Sharda Ramakrishna Name, and the piece is called Ramakrishna Nam, and it was written in Sanskrit by Swami Harshananda.
Krishna Avatara Advaita Gana Nisha Siddha Vishwara Koti Jivan Mukti Sarva Mukti Mahatma Paramahamsa Hey Rama Krishna Hey Sharadamani Hey Durga Devi Hey Mahakali Parabrahma Parashakti Jagadrupa Rama Krishna who characterizes ultimate reality, who embodies its supreme power, who has projected the universe and filled it with his very being, whose presence is a beacon of protection lighting the way, the original master who contains the essence of pure spirit, in whom all beings rest, imbibing the atmosphere of truth, the very manifestation of eternal joy, of infinite measure, inherently complete, suffused with ecstatic love, the unimpeded vehicle of the Divine Mother's boundless power, who lovingly planted the seed of intelligence in the garden of the universe, who is the sole cause of existence. His name is Ramakrishna. Destroyer of doubts and impurities, which pollutes the mind, preserver of its natural sweetness and innocence, who is eternal by nature, reflecting innate purity, intelligence, and freedom. To him we pay heartfelt homage. Ever absorbed in perfect union with absolute knowledge, the master of life and death, who oversees all transitional states, as sweet as a child, but ever immersed in illumined consciousness, the king of yogis. His name is Ramakrishna. The mere sound of his name alone brings salvation and liberation. He is incomparable, but ever free of infatuation with name and fame, within whom all possible regions exist, the support of the creatures, who annuls karmas and difficulties. The father of yoga, of unequaled equanimity, whose feet are flowers filled with the pollen of fulfillment, the perfume of bliss, and the nectar of enlightenment, who is irretrievably plunged in timeless, deathless awareness, who is the Lord of the gods. His name is Ramakrishna. The consummate yogi who reveals truth to others, the bearer of perfection who demonstrates the way of jnana, bhakti, and karma yoga, who fuses knowledge, devotion, and action into one complete path, to whom liberated beings turn as their sole preceptor, who is both beyond the three gunas and master of the gunas. That is the Supreme Lord, Sri Ramakrishna, the essence of God in form, who is both friend and ally, who is indescribably precious to the earth dwellers. His name is Ramakrishna. Whose name and form are Vishnu's own, who is the epitome of fearlessness, who is all-powerful, yet peaceful, loving, and understanding, whose ultimate purpose is to bestow spirituality upon his children, whose intentions are always gracious. The destroyer of transgressions, the bestower of merit, the one who appears in sincere aspirants as the power of discrimination, who grants the gods their share of bliss, whose power is constant, who offered himself fully to the Divine Mother. His name is Ramakrishna. Whose life was a series of overwhelming waves of desire for God alone, which suffused both heart and mind with spiritual intensity, who surrendered fully to the Devi, who loved and favored him highly, who always remains dedicated to her feet of wisdom, who is full of devotion, steadfast and dedicated in service of the Lord, who is indeed ever one with Sri Ram and Sri Krishna, who destroys the inmost fears of those who contemplate him. This one is supreme. His name is Ramakrishna. O thou who art an undifferentiated mass of unified awareness, who supports the ever-free, the liberated, and the perfected ones, the foundation of all enlightened beings and their sole refuge. O Sharda Ramakrishna, the Divine Mother of the universe on earth, perpetual victory unto thee.
Hey Ramakrishna, Hey Sharda Mani, Hey Durga Devi, Hey Mahakali, Par Brahma Par Shakti Jagadupa Ramakrishna, Par Brahma Par Shakti Jagadupa Ramakrishna, Par Brahma
Tasato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrichor ma amritam gamoya, abhira bhira maedi, rudra yate dakshinam mukam, tenamam pahinicham, om shanti shanti shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth, from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real. Lead us, O Lord and Mother of the universe, from the illusion of death to eternal life. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. Ah.